My wife looked at the judge and said, "He's a deadbeat. He can't even afford to feed his own children." The courtroom laughed. Not everyone, not the judge, but enough people in the gallery that I could feel it. That particular vibration of public humiliation that starts in your chest and radiates outward until your fingertips go numb. A woman in the second row covered her mouth. A man near the back shook his head like he'd just heard the saddest joke in the world. Petra's attorney, Dana Caulfield, allowed herself a small, satisfied smile. The smile of a woman who had just landed the punch she'd been rehearsing all week. I sat in my chair at the respondents' table in Courtroom 4 of the Chatham County Superior Court in Savannah, Georgia, on December 11th, 2024, wearing a navy blue suit I had bought at Goodwill 6 years ago for $38. The shoulders were slightly too wide. The cuffs were frayed. The left pocket had a small tear near the seam that I'd fixed with a needle, and thread because I didn't see the point of buying a new suit when this one still worked. I said nothing. Not because I didn't have anything to say, I had plenty to say, but I had learned a long time ago, from a man who pulled shrimp out of the Wilmington River for 30 years, that the loudest person in the room is rarely the most important one. My father used to say, "Let them talk, Corbin. The river doesn't argue with the rocks, it just goes around them." So I let Petra talk. I let Dana Caulfield talk. I let the gallery laugh. And I waited. But before I tell you what happened next, before I tell you about the judge and the 20 minutes and the question that changed everything, I need to tell you how I ended up in that chair. Because this story isn't about a courtroom. It's about a choice I made a long time ago, a choice to be invisible, and what happened when the world decided I didn't matter. I am a janitor, Monday through Friday, 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. I mop floors, clean bathrooms, empty trash cans, and wipe down chalkboards at Jefferson Elementary School on Waters Avenue in Savannah, Georgia. I make $13.50 an hour. I drive a 2009 Honda Civic with 187,000 miles on it, and a passenger side mirror that's held on with electrical tape. I live in a rented apartment on Skidaway Road that costs $875 a month, utilities included, which means the air conditioning works in every room except the bedroom, which is the only room I actually need it in because Savannah in the summer is not a city, it's a sauna with traffic lights. My name is Corbin Mayer. I am 42 years old, and if you looked at my life from the outside, from the parking lot of Jefferson Elementary where my Honda sits next to Nestor's Toyota and the other cars that belong to the people who clean buildings for a living, you would see exactly what my wife saw. A man who had given up. A man who had settled. A man who mopped floors because he couldn't do anything else. You would be wrong. But I'll get to that. I grew up in Savannah. Not the Savannah of the historic district, not the Savannah of the squares, and the Spanish moss, and the tourists taking ghost tours. I grew up in the other Savannah, the Savannah south of Victory Drive, where the houses are small, and the driveways are cracked, and the nearest grocery store is a 20-minute bus ride away. My father, Hollis Mayer, was a shrimper. He worked out of Thunderbolt, the little fishing community on the Wilmington River just east of the city. He left the dock at 4 a.m. every morning and came home smelling like salt and diesel, and the particular kind of exhaustion that settles into a man's bones when his body has been working harder than his paycheck can justify. He made enough to keep the lights on and the refrigerator full, and he considered that a success. He died when I was 14. Heart attack on the boat. They found him on the deck with a net in his hand. The other shrimpers said he was pulling in a haul when it happened, which meant he died working, which meant he died the way he lived, giving everything he had to something that gave just enough back to keep him going. My mother, Opal, cleaned rooms at the DeSoto Hotel on Liberty Street. She did that for 22 years until her back gave out, and the doctor told her she couldn't lift anything heavier than a coffee cup. She was 59. She'd been lifting mattresses and scrubbing bathtubs since she was 37, and the work had compressed 3 discs in her spine into something the doctor described as structurally compromised, which is a medical way of saying broken. She lives in Thunderbolt now, in a small house on Bonaventure Road. Social Security and a monthly payment I send through my attorney's office. She thinks it's a work bonus. I let her think that. I taught myself to code when I was 16, not at school. School didn't have computer classes, not real ones, Just a room with 8 ancient desktops and a teacher who knew less about them than I did. I learned at the Live Oak Public Library on Bull Street. Every afternoon after school, I took the bus downtown, sat at a library computer, and taught myself. HTML first, because it was the easiest to see results. Then JavaScript, then Python, then everything else, one language at a time, one tutorial at a time, one error message at a time. The librarian, a woman named Mrs. Paget, let me stay past closing once a week. She'd lock up around me and say, "Don't steal anything, Corbin." I never did, except knowledge, which Mrs. Paget said didn't count. At 19, I got a job at a small IT firm in Savannah. DataCore Solutions, 12 employees, an office above a sandwich shop on Broughton Street. No degree, no certifications, just a portfolio of projects I'd built on library computers and a willingness to work harder than anyone else in the room. They started me at $11 an hour. Within 2 years, I was their lead developer. Within 4, I was running their cybersecurity division, which was just me and a guy named Phil, who drank too much Mountain Dew and could crack a firewall in his sleep. That's where I saw the problem. Small banks, community banks, credit unions, the little financial institutions that served neighborhoods and small towns and farming communities across the Southeast. They were getting destroyed by cyber attacks, ransomware, phishing schemes, data breaches. The big banks had million-dollar security budgets. The small banks had Phil and me and a prayer. I started building Stonewall in my garage in January of 2016. The idea had been growing in my head for months, but that January I finally sat down and started writing the code. 3 months later, in April, Ezra was born. By that summer, he was sleeping in a crib 10 feet from my desk, and I was writing code until 3 a.m. every night with one ear tuned to his breathing and one eye on the monitor. 14 months of that. 14 months of split-screen fatherhood and obsessive engineering. My son growing in the crib while the software grew on the screen. Stonewall was a cybersecurity platform designed specifically for small and mid-sized banks. Not the bloated, overpriced enterprise software that the big vendors sold. Something lean, effective, affordable. Something that could protect a community bank in rural Georgia with the same strength that protected a Wall Street firm. I finished the first version in March of 2017. I licensed it through a company I created called Mayor Digital LLC, registered in Delaware, with all communications handled through my attorney, Fletcher Griggs. No public-facing website. No interviews, no photographs, no connection between Corbin Mayer the person and Stonewall the product. The first bank to license it was Planters First in Statesboro, then Ogeechee Community Credit Union, then a bank in Valdosta, then one in Brunswick, then 3 in South Carolina, then 12 in Alabama. Word spread the way it does in small banking communities, through conferences and phone calls, and the particular trust that exists between people who serve the same kind of customers in the same kind of towns. Today, Stonewall is licensed by over 400 banks across the southeastern United States. It generates approximately $2.8 million per year in licensing fees. My total net worth, after 7 years of revenue minus taxes, expenses, and reinvestment, is approximately $14.6 million. And I mop floors at Jefferson Elementary School for $13.50 an hour. I know what you're thinking. You're thinking I'm crazy. You're thinking no sane person sits on $14 million and drives a Honda Civic with electrical tape on the mirror. You're thinking there has to be something wrong with me, some pathology, some dysfunction, some broken piece that makes me live like I'm poor when I'm not. Maybe, but let me tell you what I saw growing up, and then you can decide. My uncle, Darrell, my father's brother, won $40,000 in a settlement after a car accident in 2001. He was 38 years old, had never had more than $500 in his bank account at one time, and suddenly he had $40,000. Within 6 months, he had a new truck, a new girlfriend, and a cocaine habit that ate through the money like fire through paper. He was dead by 40. Overdose in a motel room on Highway 80. The truck was repossessed. The girlfriend was gone. The money was gone. Everything was gone. My cousin, Lainey, married a man named Curtis who told her he was an entrepreneur. Curtis drained her savings account, maxed out 3 credit cards in her name, and disappeared to Texas, leaving her with $67,000 in debt and a 2-year-old daughter. Lainey works 2 jobs now. She's 44 and looks 60. And my father, the happiest man I ever knew, a shrimper who never had more than a few $1,000s to his name, who wore the same boots until the soles separated from the uppers, who considered a good day one where the catch was big and the engine didn't quit. He didn't need money to be happy. He needed the river. He needed the work. He needed to come home at the end of the day and sit on the porch with my mother and watch the sun go down over the marsh. I decided when I was 25 that if I ever made real money, nobody would know. Not because I was ashamed of it, because I had seen what visibility does. It changes how people look at you. It changes how they treat you. It attracts the wrong people and repels the right ones. Money is a spotlight, and I have never wanted to be on stage. So I built a wall around it. Stone wall for the banks. A different kind of wall for myself. I took the janitor job in 2021. Not because I needed the income, because I needed something that kept me honest. Something that reminded me every night that work is work, that no labor is beneath a person, that the man who cleans the building is as essential as the man who runs it. I needed calluses on my hands and a sore back at 2 a.m. and the smell of industrial cleaner in my clothes, because those things kept me connected to the world my father lived in, the world my mother lived in, the world that made me who I am. Nestor Vidal, my fellow janitor, is 45 years old. He came from the Dominican Republic in 2009, was a licensed electrician in Santo Domingo, but his credentials didn't transfer. He's been working night shifts and taking classes during the day, slowly rebuilding his career in a country that made him start over from zero. We mop floors together 5 nights a week. We talk about our kids, about baseball, about the particular indignity of cleaning up after people who don't notice you exist. He's one of the best men I know. He has no idea I could buy the school we clean, and that's exactly how I want it. I met Petra Solis in 2012. I was 30, working at Datacore during the day and starting to build what would become stone wall in my head at night. She was 27, office manager at a car dealership on Abercorn Street, pretty and ambitious, and full of the kind of energy that made me believe she could see past the surface of things. She couldn't, but I didn't know that yet. We married in June of 2014. Small ceremony at the courthouse. I was already making quiet money from some freelance cybersecurity work, but I kept it separate, routed through Fletcher's office, invisible. Petra knew I was into computers, but didn't understand what that meant and didn't particularly care. She cared that I had a steady job, that I was reliable, that I showed up. When I left Datacore in 2019 to focus full-time on Stonewall, I told Petra I was doing freelance IT consulting. She saw me working on my laptop in the garage. She saw some money coming in, enough to cover my share of the bills. She didn't ask questions because the answers wouldn't have interested her. When I took the janitor job in 2021, everything changed. "You're going to be a janitor?" She said it like I told her I was going, to become a professional clown. It's honest work. It's $13 an hour, Corbin. I make $52,000 a year. You're going to mop floors while I pay the mortgage? I'll cover my share. Your share? Your share of what? This life? This nothing life in this nothing house with this nothing car? She gestured at the Honda in the driveway. I didn't sign up for this. What did you sign up for? More. I signed up for more. The contempt grew from there. It wasn't sudden, it was geological. Layer by layer, year by year, the sediment of her disappointment built up until it formed a wall between us that no conversation could penetrate. She stopped introducing me to her coworkers. When people asked what her husband did, she said "it" because janitor was a word she couldn't bring herself to say out loud. She started coming home later, spending time with her colleagues at the dealership, particularly her boss, a man named Ryland Ott, who drove a BMW and wore watches that cost more than my car. I don't know if she slept with Ryland. I didn't investigate. Didn't install cameras. Didn't check her phone. That's not who I am. But I saw the way she talked about him. The admiration in her voice. The comparison in her eyes every time she looked at me and saw a janitor where she wanted to see a man like Ryland. She filed for divorce in September of 2024. I wasn't surprised. I had watched it coming the way you watch weather build on the horizon. Dark clouds stacking, the air going still, the pressure dropping. You know the storm is coming. You can't stop it. You can only decide how you're going to stand in it. She wanted the house. She wanted full custody. She wanted child support. She wanted alimony. And she wanted me to know, in explicit, public, unmistakable terms, that I was less than her, that I had failed as a provider, as a husband, as a man. She hired Dana Caulfield. Dana was 44, aggressive, built a career on what she called equalizing the financial power dynamic in divorce, which was a polished way of saying she took everything she could get from husbands and gave it to wives. She was good at it. She was expensive. And she looked at me across the courtroom the way a hawk looks at a field mouse. I represented myself. Fletcher Griggs begged me not to. Corbin, this is insanity. You're walking into a custody hearing without counsel. You have $14.6 million. Hire a lawyer. I don't need a lawyer, Fletcher. I need the judge to see who I am. Who you are is a man in a goodwill suit representing himself against one of the most aggressive family law attorneys in Savannah. Exactly. That's who I want the judge to see, for now. And when do you want the judge to see the rest? When it matters. Fletcher was quiet for a moment. You're playing a long game. I've been playing a long game for 7 years, Fletcher. This is just the last move. Here's what I asked Fletcher to do. 2 days before the hearing, he submitted a sealed financial disclosure to the court through proper legal channels. The disclosure contained everything. Mayor Digital LLC, Stonewall's licensing agreements, revenue statements, trust account balances, investment portfolios, tax returns for the past 7 years, all verified by an independent forensic accountant Fletcher had retained, all filed under seal due to proprietary business information and trade secret protections. The judge would have it. The judge would review it. And when the time came, the judge would know exactly who was sitting in that goodwill suit. December 11th, 2024. Courtroom 4. Judge Emmett Lavelle presiding. Judge Lavelle was 62, former Marine, 18 years on the bench, the kind of judge who ran his courtroom the way a captain runs a ship, with absolute authority and zero tolerance for theater. He had a reputation for fairness that even the attorneys who lost in his courtroom respected. Dana Caulfield presented Petra's case first. She was polished, efficient, devastating. Your Honor, the petitioner, Petra Mayer, is the primary financial provider for this family. She earns $52,000 per year as an office manager, maintaining stable employment for over 6 years. The respondent, Corbin Mayer, is employed as a night janitor at Jefferson Elementary School, earning approximately $28,000 per year. He drives a vehicle that is 15 years old with nearly 200,000 miles. He resides in a rented apartment. He has disclosed no savings, no investments, no retirement accounts, and no assets of any kind. She paused for effect. The respondent cannot provide the standard of living these children deserve. The petitioner requests primary custody, child support consistent with the respondent's income, and spousal maintenance to offset the financial disparity. Then, Petra took the stand. Dana walked her through the questions, each one designed to build a portrait of a failed husband. Mrs. Mayer, can you describe the respondent's contribution to the household income? He makes $13.50 an hour mopping floors at an elementary school. I've been carrying this family financially for years. And the respondent's career trajectory. Has he made efforts to advance his employment? No. He had a decent IT job and he quit to become a janitor. I begged him to find something better. He refused. In your view, is the respondent capable of providing for your children? That's when she said it. She turned slightly toward the gallery, toward the people watching, and delivered the line she had probably practiced in front of her bathroom mirror that morning. He's a deadbeat. He can't even afford to feed his own children. The gallery reacted. Snickers, head shakes, whispers, Dana Caulfield's small smile. The woman in the second row covering her mouth. I sat in my goodwill suit and said nothing, Judge Lavelle wrote something on his notepad. Then he looked at me. "Mr. Mayor, would you like to cross-examine the witness?" "No, Your Honor." "Would you like to make a statement?" "Not at this time, Your Honor." Dana Caulfield looked surprised. She had expected me to argue, to defend myself, to give her ammunition for rebuttal. My silence confused her. It confused the gallery. It confused Petra, who looked at me from the witness stand with something between satisfaction and suspicion, like a hunter who had caught something too easily. Judge Lavelle glanced at his clerk, a brief exchange of eye contact. The clerk nodded slightly. "The court will take a 20-minute recess," Judge Lavelle said. "I need to review a matter in chambers." He stood. Everyone stood. He disappeared through the door behind the bench, and the courtroom erupted in whispered conversation. Petra leaned over to Dana. "What's happening? Why is he stopping?" "I don't know. Could be anything. Don't worry. We're in a strong position." They were not in a strong position. They just didn't know it yet. 22 minutes later, Judge Lavelle returned. The courtroom went quiet. He sat down, adjusted his glasses, and looked at the room with an expression I recognized. It was the expression of a man who had just learned something that changed his understanding of everything he'd heard in the last hour. "Before we proceed," he said, "I'd like to address a sealed filing that has been submitted to this court and independently verified." He turned to me. "Mr. Mayor, I've reviewed the financial disclosure submitted on your behalf by Fletcher Griggs, Esquire, of Charleston, South Carolina. Do you confirm the contents of that filing?" "I do, Your Honor." "And you authorize the court to discuss relevant portions with the opposing party?" "I do." Judge Lavelle turned to Petra and Dana Caulfield. "Counsel, I'd like to see both parties in my chambers. Now." Dana Caulfield stood up, buttoning her jacket with the practiced calm of an attorney who wasn't sure what was happening but didn't want the courtroom to see her uncertainty. Petra stood too, smoothing her skirt, glancing at me. I stood and followed them through the door into the judge's chambers. The room was wood-paneled, lined with law books and framed military commendations, a desk cluttered with files, 4 chairs arranged in a semicircle. Judge Lavelle sat behind his desk. We sat in front of it. The door closed. "Ms. Caulfield," Judge Lavelle said. "Mrs. Mayor, before we proceed, I need to ask a question." He looked directly at Petra. "Ma'am, do you have any idea who your husband really is?" Petra blinked. "He's a janitor." "Is that all you believe him to be?" "I don't understand the question, Your Honor." Judge Lavelle opened a folder on his desk. "Mr. Mayor is the sole owner of Mayor Digital, LLC, a Delaware-registered company that operates a cybersecurity software platform called Stonewall. This platform is currently licensed by over 400 community banks and credit unions across the southeastern United States." The room went silent. "The software generates annual licensing revenue of approximately $2.8 million. Mr. Mayor's verified net worth, as confirmed by an independent forensic accountant, is approximately $14.6 million. Dana Caulfield's pen stopped moving. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. In 19 years of family law, she had never had a case file explode in her hands like this. Petra stared at the judge, then at me, then at the judge again. Her face was cycling through emotions the way a slot machine cycles through symbols: confusion, disbelief, shock, and then something darker. The slow, dawning recognition that every assumption she had made about me, about us, about our entire marriage, was wrong. "That's impossible," she whispered. "He's a janitor. He mops floors." "He does," Judge Lavelle said. "He also built a company that protects the financial infrastructure of 400 communities. The two are not mutually exclusive." "I don't— 14 million?" She turned to me. "Corbin, is this true?" I looked at her. At this woman I had loved. This woman who had called me a deadbeat in open court 25 minutes ago. This woman who had laughed with the gallery at the idea that I could provide for my own children. "Yes." "Since when?" "Since 2017. "We were married in 2014. You've had this money for 7 years and you never told me." "The assets are held in trust through my attorney. they're legally separate property, generated through a business you had no involvement in or knowledge of. Dana Caulfield found her voice. Your Honor, if the respondent has been concealing assets during the marriage, that's grounds for— The assets were not concealed, Counselor, Judge Lavelle interrupted. They were held in a legally structured trust through a licensed attorney. The financial disclosure was filed with this court in accordance with proper procedure. There is no concealment. There is privacy. There is a significant legal difference. Dana closed her mouth. Furthermore, the judge continued, the characterization of Mr. Mayer as, and I'm quoting the petitioner's testimony, a deadbeat who can't afford to feed his own children, is not only inaccurate, it is precisely the kind of testimony that concerns this court when evaluating the fitness and judgment of a custodial parent. Petra's face went white. Judge Lavelle leaned back. Let me be clear about what I've observed today. I've observed a petitioner who publicly humiliated her spouse based on assumptions about his financial status. I've observed an attorney who built an entire case around those assumptions without conducting even basic due diligence into the respondent's actual financial position. And I've observed a respondent who sat quietly through all of it and never once raised his voice, never once retaliated, and never once tried to embarrass the mother of his children in return. He looked at me. Mr. Mayer, would you like to make a statement now? I stood, not because the court required it, but because my father taught me that when you have something important to say, you stand up and say it. Your Honor, I don't want to punish my wife. I don't want to humiliate her or take her children from her. Ezra and Posey love their mother, and they need her in their lives. I paused, felt the weight of the next words before I spoke them. I chose to live the way I live because I believe a man's worth is not determined by his car or his clothes or his bank account. I wanted my children to see their father work, not manage, not delegate, work. I wanted them to understand that the man who mops the floor is as valuable as the man who owns the building. I wanted them to grow up without the weight of money shaping who they become, because I've seen what that weight does to people who aren't ready for it. I looked at Petra. She was crying now, quietly, the kind of crying that comes from shame, not sadness. I'm asking for shared custody, Your Honor, 50-50. I have the means to provide for my children. I always have. But more than that, I have the desire to be present for them the way my father was present for me, every morning, every night, every moment I can get. Judge Lavelle was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. This court will award joint custody, 50-50, effective immediately. Child support will be calculated based on both parties' actual incomes, including the respondent's business revenue, at the standard percentage. No alimony is awarded, as the financial disparity clearly does not favor the petitioner. He paused. The marital home will be sold and proceeds divided equitably. Mr. Mayer, I'd recommend retaining an attorney for the financial aspects going forward. I have one, Your Honor. He's been waiting for this call for 9 years. Judge Lavelle almost smiled. Court is adjourned. We walked out of chambers and back into the courtroom. The gallery was still there, still waiting, still curious about what had happened behind that closed door. They didn't get an explanation. They didn't deserve one. Some things are between the people they happen to and the judge who witnesses them. Petra caught me in the hallway outside the courtroom. Corbin, wait. I stopped. She looked wrecked. Mascara streaked, hands shaking. The polished, confident woman who had called me a deadbeat an hour ago was gone. In her place was someone I almost recognized, the woman I had met in 2012, before the contempt and the disappointment and the slow erosion of whatever she had once felt for me. Why? She said. Why did you hide it? We could have had everything. The house, the vacations, the life. We could have given the kids everything. I did give them everything, Petra. I gave them a father who was home, a father who mopped floors and packed lunches and drove a beat-up Honda to their school plays. A father they could touch, not a bank account they could spend. But I didn't know. I thought you were a deadbeat. I know. You told the judge. She flinched. You looked at me and saw a janitor. You saw the suit in the car and the paycheck and you decided that's all I was. You never asked what I did in the garage until 3 a.m. You never asked why Fletcher Griggs called the house twice a month. You never asked because you didn't care. You had already decided I was small, and nothing I did was going to change your mind. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Can we fix this? Can we start over? Now that you know I have money. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. The answer was on her face, transparent as glass. She didn't want to fix the marriage. She wanted access to the bank account, and the fact that she couldn't see the difference was exactly why I had hidden it in the first place. Goodbye, Petra. I walked out of the courthouse into the December air. Savannah in winter is gentle. 58 degrees, a breeze off the river, the smell of magnolia and salt. I got in my Honda Civic, the one with the electrical tape on the mirror, and I drove to Jefferson Elementary to start my shift. 6 months have passed. It's June 2025 now. Savannah is deep in summer, the kind of heat that makes the air shimmer above the asphalt and turns every surface into something you don't want to touch with bare skin. I still work the night shift at Jefferson Elementary. Nestor is still next to me, mop in hand, 5 nights a week. The school found out about the courtroom situation. Someone always talks, and the principal, Mrs. Beaumont, called me into her office. Is it true, Mr. Mayor, the Stonewall thing? Yes, ma'am. And you still want to work here? If you'll have me. She looked at me for a long time. Then she said, You're the most reliable employee I've got. I don't care if you own half the state. Be here at 6. Nestor's reaction was different. The local news ran a brief piece about the courtroom reveal, just a 2-minute segment, no cameras, no interviews, but enough that people who knew me connected the dots. Nestor confronted me during our break, both of us sitting on overturned buckets in the supply closet eating sandwiches. You're a millionaire, apparently, and you mop floors. Somebody's got to. You're out of your mind, Corbin, you know that, right? Probably. He shook his head, took a bite of his sandwich, chewed slowly. Then, You're still taking the second-floor bathrooms tonight. Wouldn't have it any other way. Nothing changed between us. That's the thing about Nestor. He's the same person whether you're rich or poor, and he expects the same from you. That's why he's one of the best men I know. Ezra is 9 now, Posey is 5. They spend half their time with me, half with Petra. The arrangement works. It's not perfect, nothing is, but it works because I make it work. Because I show up, because I am present the way my father was present. I started teaching Ezra to code. Saturday. Mornings, my kitchen table, an old laptop I bought used for $120. He doesn't know he's learning the same language his father used to build a company worth millions. He just thinks it's a game. Make the character move. Make the color change. Make the computer do something it wasn't doing before. Dad, look, I made it draw a circle. That's great, buddy. Now make it draw 10 circles. How? That's the fun part. Figure it out. He furrows his brow the same way I used to at the library on Bull Street. 16 years old, staring at a screen, trying to make the machine obey. The same concentration, the same stubborn refusal to quit. Posey sits next to us and draws pictures of cats with crayons. She doesn't care about coding, she cares about cats. And that's fine, she'll find her thing. I'll be there when she does. Petra has adjusted, slowly, painfully. The divorce humbled her in ways I don't think she expected. The woman who walked into that courtroom believing she was the success, and I was the failure, walked out, understanding that she had spent 10 years measuring the wrong things. Whether that understanding changes her, I don't know. That's her journey, not mine. She called me last week, not about the kids, not about logistics, just to talk. Do you remember the night Ezra was born? She asked. Of course. You stayed up all night, not because he was crying, because you were watching him breathe. You sat in that chair next to the crib and just watched him breathe for 6 hours. I remember. Why? Because I couldn't believe he was real. I couldn't believe something that perfect existed, and it was mine, and nobody could take it away. She was quiet for a long time. I think that's when I should have known. Known what? That you were never a small man, Corbin. I just couldn't see it. My mother came over for dinner last Sunday. I made shrimp and grits, my father's recipe, the one he learned from his father, who learned it from a man on a dock in Thunderbolt 60 years ago. Ezra helped me peel the shrimp. Posey set the table, putting the forks on the wrong side because she's 5 and forks don't have sides yet. My mother sat at the kitchen table watching us. She's 67 now, smaller than she used to be, bent from 22 years of lifting hotel mattresses, but her eyes are sharp and her smile is the same one I've known since I was born. Your father would have loved this, she said. I know, Mom. He would have loved the way you live, the work, the hands, the not showing off. She looked around the apartment at the second-hand furniture, the old TV, the stack of library books on the counter. He would have understood. I learned it from him. You learned a lot of things from him, but the most important one was this. She pointed at me, then at Ezra, then at Posey. Being here, that's all your father ever wanted to do, just be here. I'm mopping the hallway at Jefferson Elementary right now. It's 11:47 p.m. The building is quiet except for the squeak of my shoes on the linoleum and the distant hum of the HVAC system that somebody, not me, maintains. Nestor is 2 hallways over, singing something in Spanish that sounds like it should be sadder than it is. My phone buzzes in my pocket. A notification from Fletcher. Another bank just signed a Stonewall license. Revenue projection for next year, $3.1 million. I read it, put my phone away, pick up the mop. Because the money was never the point. The money is what I built. But the work, the real work, the showing up, the being present, the teaching my son to code and letting my daughter draw cats and calling my mother every Sunday and mopping floors alongside a man from Santo Domingo who doesn't know and doesn't care what's in my bank account, that's what I am. My wife told the judge I was a deadbeat. The courtroom laughed. I sat in my Goodwill suit and said nothing. Then the judge found out who I really was. And the courtroom stopped, laughing. But here's the thing. The judge's opinion didn't change who I am. Petra's opinion didn't change who I am. The courtroom's laughter didn't change who I am. I was the same man before the reveal as I was after. Same hands, same work, same love for my children, same Honda Civic with electrical tape on the mirror. The only thing that changed was what other people could see. Now, I want to ask you something. What would you do if you had $14 million and nobody knew? Would you buy the big house and the fancy car and make sure everyone saw it? Or would you keep mopping? And here's the deeper question. Have you ever been looked down on by someone who didn't know your real worth? Not your financial worth? Your human worth? Have you ever been judged by your job title, your paycheck, your clothes, and known in your bones that the person judging you had no idea what they were looking at? Drop your answer in the comments. I read every single one. If this story hit you somewhere, hit that like button. Share it with someone who's been underestimated, someone who's been called a deadbeat, someone who knows that the man mopping the floor might just be the most important person in the building. Comment your thoughts below and subscribe to the channel so you never miss another story. I'll see you in the next one.
The reason why setting this routine can give you motivation is because you can know that as long as you follow that routine, you are pretty much guaranteed to improve. What's up, everybody? Chào các bạn và chào mừng các bạn quay trở lại với podcast Slow and Clear của What's Up English. My name is Carter, and in this video, you are going to learn 3 ways to increase your motivation to learn English. These tips can even work if you're living in Vietnam and you don't use English in your day-to-day life, because I think that is around 99% of you. 99% of the people who watch this podcast are Vietnamese and living in Vietnam. There are some viewers who are in the USA or Japan, Australia, Canada, and some different countries. And if you are in those other countries, then these tips can work for you too. Before we begin, if you want to improve your vocabulary and pronunciation, then don't forget to check out my product, The 1000 Most Common Words. This is a PDF with the 1000 most useful words for daily